once in a while I get the opportunity to come speak here before you folks, and I truly appreciate that because it gives me an opportunity to let you know what's going on. Right now, I say, I've been given a lot of different speaking engagements, and right now everything is pretty much about the 4 B's. The budget, bodies, the building, and buds, or marijuana. And I'll start out with the budget. From the El Dorado County Sheriff's standpoint, we're doing good. We're in the same places we pretty much have been, with the exception of a couple changes, and I'll talk about those. But we started off the year, the county started off the year looking at upwards of a $24 million structural deficit. That dropped down to 19, then it went down to 14, and then we finished up building our last budget building sessions, looking at a $7 million structural deficit. Now, the first meeting that was brought up to how we were going to close that $7 million structural deficit countywide was a proposal that every department was going to take a 6.25% hit. And I remember that meeting pretty well because I said that's impossible, it's not going to happen. You can't do that. Number one, it's the wrong way of doing business. We learned this years and years ago with across-the-board cuts. You have core functions that you have to provide, you have mandated functions you have to provide, and then you have others that are nice to haves or not legally mandated. So to say you want to do 6.25% across the board, number one, they don't work, and number two, what it does is it creates a very hostile environment during the budget building process. And again, that started taking place. But be as it may, that 6.25%, we were looking at roughly, what was it? I can't remember the amount now, because I know we said we'd come up with what we could. And what we did come up with, we went through, and we'd done this before, but we went through an actual line-by-line sub-object code budget review for the entire Sheriff's Office operations. Just like you would think. We looked at pencils, we looked at paper clips, we looked at everything. And we cut $1.2 million out of our services and supplies. But that's not going to be sustainable. And I'll explain it like this. Take, for instance, our ammunition budget. We cut it significantly, but it's not going to be sustainable. Because what I have in my magazine now gets us through mandated training, quarterly, for every deputy, for our SWAT training, for everything that we do that expends ammunition. So eventually, if I don't bring that budget back up to where it was, we're going to run out of bullets. We can't do that. So our cuts are not sustainable, but we made it happen. And we're going to get through it, and it's fine. Another area we made cuts in was a promised salary savings. Last year, we promised $1.3 million in salary savings. We were lucky enough we met that budget target by November of last year. And what that means is every day that a position is vacant, that budgeted amount for that position is a savings. Now, I don't hold positions open, and I don't believe in budgeting that way for salary savings. If the Board of Supervisors gives me so many position allocations, then you as a taxpayer deserve to have those position allocations filled to provide that service. But in the normal course of business, with an agency our size of 371 full-time employees on the books, at any given time we run a 5 to 7% vacancy rate because it takes a long time to hire people not only in civil service, but in public safety because of all the other huge hurdles we have to go through with backgrounds and sites and medicals and everything else. So the result is every day that position is open is a savings. This year, we returned a total budget surplus back to the county on our fund balance of $3.5 million, over and above the 1.3 I promised them. So we did pretty good giving back. Since I've been in office, I've returned over $17 million back to the county in fund balance savings. So, back to where I was going. We returned $1.2 million in services and supplies. We promised $2.9 million in salary savings this next budget year for a total of $4.1 million. We'll make it. I have absolutely no doubt we're going to make that target. Matter of fact, me and the undersheriff got a kind of little running bet. He thinks we won't hit that target until March or April of next year. I says we'll hit it in February 15th. Of course, I get to keep the number, so we'll see. So that was going into the proposed budget and what we came up with June 30th of this year. Now, something that happens every year. I mentioned I came up with over $5 million in surplus this year. And I've seen it. This is my 5th budget process. Proposed budget closes June 30th. Then all the books close for the fiscal year for the county. Then come around September 15th is when they do final budget. This year it's September 29th when we're having final budget. We just gave the final budget hearings last Monday. But in that interim, when all the books start to close and all the fund balances start to roll in, things start looking real rosy. And I'm not going to point fingers, but typically at that point in time, a lot of money gets spent because things look rosy. So if you think we went in with a $7 million deficit, now the county's looking at a $7 million deficit, now the county's looking at a $7 million surplus. And all I've been pleading with the board is, don't spend it. You have a lot of capital improvement projects coming up. They have a lot of things to deal with coming up in the future, things that have been neglected, things that they need to get caught up on. Those things need to come first. What I have asked for. Prior budgets, I haven't asked for anything. The only thing that I've asked for is keep my agency whole and keep my budget increases in line with statutory increases. So step and column, negotiated salary raises between the different labor organizations, bargaining groups. They've kept my budget whole in those regards. So whenever they gave the deputy sheriffs a raise by Charter 504, they upped my budget that amount. If they gave my local 1 union members a raise, they upped my budget that amount. And that's great. But I haven't asked for anything. This year I did. I asked for 3 deputies. Because it's taken me this long to get through the process with the unions to get approval to move forward with one of the last things that I had when I campaigned in 2008 to 2010 was a resident deputy program. And I finally got that through negotiations with the DSA, and now I've gone to the board to ask for 3 positions, 3 new deputies to staff those resident deputy posts. One will be in the North County, one will be in the Canyon, pretty much down to Camino and up to Strawberry, and one will be in the South County. Some people ask, why don't we have one down in El Dorado Hills? Quite honestly, because you have a lot of deputies down in El Dorado Hills, usually all the time. Maybe that will come someday, but right now in those more rural areas, to have a deputy there all the time and be a point of contact and a liaison between me and that community and the sheriff's office in that community makes a lot of sense. It works better in the rural areas. In the more urban areas or El Dorado Hills and the city centers like that, maybe someday we'll do that. But right now we probably have, this is Wednesday night. This is Wednesday night. There's probably 4 deputies on down here right now. So, but when I negotiated for those 3 positions with the new county administrative officer, his name is Larry Combs, nice guy, I really like him, he's straight with me, he'll look me in the eye and tell me that's not going to happen, and I appreciate that. I like that a heck of a lot more than somebody looking me in the eye and saying, well, we'll think about it, we'll work it out, and then come to find out later it never was going to happen anyway. But he told me, nope, county's not going to pay for 3 deputies. But I'll tell you what we will do. You get about $500,000 a year in rural crimes money from the state. Yep. He says that's legislatively, that's what that money can be used for. That's what you're going to use that money for. And I said, Larry, that sounds all fine and dandy, but here's the problem. I use that money. I have plans for that money because there's a lot of things that I won't go to the board for to buy because I know the board's going to blow up and give me all kinds of reasons why I need to justify it and tell me no and everything. I just don't want to go there. So I have my restricted streams of money that I save and I use to pay for those things that I know that I don't have to go to the board for. For instance, one was the Bearcat a few years ago when we bought the brand new Bearcat, our emergency response and recovery vehicle. That was $291,000. I paid for that out of accumulated asset forfeiture and some of that rural crimes money. We have some other needs coming up. We need a mobile command post. We need something that we can roll out to a scene that has everything in it that my deputies and my crime scene personnel and everybody needs to run a crime or run a major event. Right now we're running out of old bread trucks. They work, nobody's complaining. But that's what I had set aside those monies for. We're coming up on end of life on our report management system. There's less than 2% of the market share right now. They're gonna go away. When that happens, what are we gonna do? So that's roughly gonna be $2.5 million. I've been saving that money. He looked me in the eye and he promised me, if I promise you that I will make sure that moving forward, and I'll put it in writing, that the Board of Supervisors pays for those things that are necessary for your operations, will you agree to use this $500,000, $520,000 out of your rural crimes money? And I said, no, I don't trust you, honestly. And he said, John, I'll put it in writing. I said, you're asking me to do a huge leap of faith. And he said, I know I am, but I will put it in writing. And he did. So we're going to see. I hope it works. And moving forward, I pray it works. But we're going to be okay. We'll have 3 more deputies. We'll have the resident deputy program started. We're at the same staffing levels today, prior to the new 3 deputies, but we're at the same exact staffing levels today as we were in 2003. Now, we're working very, very efficiently. We're working not harder, we're working very much smarter. In 2008, we were roughly 50 more staff through the agency. Now, what we're doing is we're looking at that staffing level in 2008 and seeing how it compares to where we are now and where we were in 2003 to see if was it really necessary. And I'll explain that. And talked about the budget, now we're on to the bodies, the second B. When we determine how much staff we need, we use all these industry standard staffing studies. There's courses that we send our sergeants and our lieutenants to that learn all these formulas and all these calls for service and time on call and proactive time and report time and all these formulas. And they come up with numbers that say you need this many deputies at this time of day in this area. As an industry, we're learning that although those are the industry standard staffing study formulas to use, and they make a lot of sense, that there's idiosyncrasies in it that skew the staffing, such as if you had, it says we need 63 patrol deputies in the Western Slope. Now, if we had 63 full-time, all the time, staff deputies on the Western Slope, that would be perfect. But I mentioned earlier about our vacancy rate. We always are down a few. We have deputies that are members of SWAT team. We have deputies that are members of the CIT team. We have deputies that are members collateral duties of crime scene investigation. We have deputies that are collateral duties of all kinds of other things, boat patrol and whatnot. So even though we have that many deputies assigned to the West Slope, it drops those numbers even more because quite frequently they're doing other things. So we're trying to come up with a way to work those formulas to make them more real. And I'd love to tell you I know what they are, but I don't. We're just starting this process. Like I said, we're at exactly 2003 levels. Not close. Not, well, we had a few more deputies and a few less dispatchers. It's uncanny how close we are. We're exactly where we are in 2003. They obviously justified the staffing for 2008. How did they get there? Why did they need them there? How efficient was it there? Was the staffing as it was organized in 2008 the most efficient way to go? Or could it have been done more efficiently? We don't know. But we're starting to look for all those answers. So that's the bodies. The building, I think the last time I spoke to the Tea Party, the county was in negotiations on 3 parcels of land in the county of El Dorado. And I'll back up a little bit. This conversation actually started in 1989 as why a new public safety facility was needed. And actually, he talks with retired Sheriff Dick Pacilio. He'll tell you that they had already outgrown the building the day they moved into it. The building that we are currently housed in, the El Dorado County Sheriff's headquarters in, has the administration in the front, patrol operations, records, evidence, and the armory and things like that. And the armory, records, and evidence and all that's in the back where the old jail was, where by law, due to Title 24, I can't house prisoners there, but I can have staff working there. That's fine. Little funny story, my first day in office, January 3rd of 2011, I was sworn in the morning in the Board of Supervisors chambers. I went to a luncheon that was put on by a big group of my supporters at Cold Spring Country Club. And while I was there, a big rainstorm came in, and it was pouring. When I came back to the office, I walked in and there was buckets and garbage cans and pails and whatever catching the rain leaking through the roof. And I asked my secretary, I said, what's up with this? And she goes, well, Sheriff, that's what happens when it rains here. I said, well, fix the roof. She says, we do. Every year we fix the roof, and every year the roof leaks. Just the way it is. So that's what started the process for me of why is this. Plus, I have your support services division for the Sheriff's Office is on Upper Broadway. I have a training room on Upper Broadway. My detectives division is on Pierre Oz Road. My radio shop is in Diamond Springs. My fiscal staff are across the parking lot. OES is underneath the Board of Supervisors. We're spread all over the place. We're paying over $250,000 in off-site facility leases a year. And then all the maintenance and everything else that goes along with it if it's not in those individual lease agreements. So we're blowing a lot of money. We did a facilities needs study internally. We used a company called Vanner. Vanner came up with looking out 40 to 50 years, which is tough to do, but we tried to. They came up with about 106,000 square feet and 10.2 acres, I believe is what they said in their study. The county, God bless them, used the same company on the heels of that to do a county facility study. Now, believe this or not, prior to this study and prior to where the county is now moving forward with some of these plans, I mentioned they have stuff to pay for. The county didn't have a deferred maintenance plan. The county fixed stuff when it broke. Now, we all own houses. We paint our houses. We maintain our houses. We maintain our roofs. We do all that. My second year in office, the whole boiler blew out of our jail in the main jail in Placerville. We've been known it was bad for years. It needed to be replaced, but there was no maintenance plan to keep those things running. So again, the county used the same company, did a facilities needs study on the heels of our needs study, and they came up through the whole study. They reviewed every facility in the county of El Dorado, every one that the county owns, every one that the county owns in the whole county of El Dorado, and they came up with 3 buildings, 3 capital facilities that the county owns that they said, look, you are wasting a lot of money keeping these things up. One was the El Dorado Center up in South Lake Tahoe. And I've seen that building, it's bad. In the wintertime, a river runs through it, literally runs through it. But it's unique in that nearly all of the programs that are run out of that building are either state or federal programs. They're paid for with state or federal dollars, nearly all. So it doesn't really make much sense for the county to even own that building. Those can be in lease buildings because the state and the federal dollars will pay for it. Your taxpayer through that end of it will pay for that way. So it's unique. The second one was the district attorney's office in the old post office on the corner of Bedford and Main. But that's closely tied to the new courthouse, the state courthouse project that's going to happen sooner or later. It's going to happen. Where that goes, how that's going to be cited, and where the DA's office needs to go. But the third one, and actually the first one on the list, was the El Dorado County Sheriff's headquarters. And there was a word in the study that was bad, but actually good for me in this process, was appalling. There's some major issues. And my biggest fear is that at any given time, I get the phone call from my undersheriff or one of my captains that says, hey, guess what, Sheriff? OSHA just left the building. There's a nice big red bow on the front door. What do you want to do? That's not going to happen. That can't happen. So we started the talks about what are we going to do. The county agreed that it's a priority. They did a whole process for location choice. Started out with over 400 parcels in the main area of Placerville, per the government code is where it can be situated. And they came down to 3. They entered negotiations on 3 properties. And right now the one that is in escrow is near the end of Industrial Drive off of Missouri Flat Road. There's a trust company there. It's behind that trust company. There's 30+ acres back there that, believe it or not, was less than half the price of either one of the other 2 properties that were just over 10 acres. And the price is roughly $2.7 million. Where they are in the process right now is CEQA's been done, but because there is a very, very reasonable funding stream out there through the USDA, brick and mortar money, that's federal money. The county had to piggyback a NEPA study on top of that because it's federal. So hopefully that'll be done shortly. The pre-application for the USDA loan is in to USDA to see if they'll
see if we can qualify to apply for it.
See if we can qualify to apply. So hopefully that'll keep moving forward. Like I said, the board has prioritized it. The Gantt schedules that I've seen show around October of 2018 for completion.
But can I point out what you're talking about is funding the construction? We purchased the land, so we're in the process that.
Yeah, the $2.6 million or 2.7 is programmed into last year's budget, or this coming year's budget. It's already been programmed, so that's done. So talked about the budget, the building, bodies. Now we'll talk about the buds. Marijuana is rampant in El Dorado County. And I'm here to tell you, and I'll apologize, I take partial blame for it, and here's why. When I first came into office, there was a committee that was already starting to talk about coming up with some kind of reasonable regulations to give my deputies, my narcotics officer agents, code enforcement, some tools to deal with this problem. And I sat at the table and I negotiated through all these different meetings the best ways to implement this. And we come up with a plan. And the board passed it. It was called Ordinance 5000.
Pretty strict, one might add.
Called Ordinance 5000. The problem was, and I had no idea, as restrictive as the ordinance is, and as well of a tool it would have given us all to deal with this issue, the commercial marijuana growers don't care about what's in the ordinance. All they care is that you have an ordinance. So all we did was put a nice big giant sign on the county lines that says, we allow.
Weed friendly.
We allow it. And it has blossomed. I don't want to use that word. That's bad word.
Budded.
It's bloomed. It's gone crazy. Most of my career was working in narcotics, and in my search warrant affidavits, I have over 1 million plants under my eyes from aerial for spotting dope. Over 1 million plants. And when I fly over El Dorado County, I cannot believe the amount of marijuana that is being grown in this county. Now, I'm not talking about those people that were paraded around in 1996 under the Proposition 215 that were seriously ill, where marijuana provided medical relief. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about folks that are coming here. They're coming here from out of state, from out of county, from all over the place, for the sole purpose of growing as much marijuana as they can, as quick as they can, making as much money as they can. They don't pay one dime in taxes. They don't contribute anything to our communities or our society. And they're doing all kinds of bad stuff. What's the fix?
Shut the water off.
Cut the water off. Love
Waste of water,
to.
too.
Love to. Fly over with male marijuana pollen. That'd work too. But I can't buy the male marijuana pollen. I don't know. There's been talk, there's supposed to be a new committee formed to come up with plans to fix it. I say better off right now, let's just repeal ordinance 5000 and let the current law, 11362.5, that sec of the health and safety code, be the governing law of the land, which it is, and we'll deal with it that way. I don't know which way it's gonna go. I think repealing it again is the easiest way. The second, other than the state of Jefferson meeting that was so well attended, the second most well-attended meeting was when we brought that issue up.
Yeah.
And it was not you folks that were at the podium saying repeal it, repeal it, repeal it. It was all of the pro-marijuana folks coming in there crying, saying, don't take my medicine away. And I started the meeting with my presentation saying this has nothing to do with your medicine. It has to do with the other people that aren't here. They're not here because they're not going to come and show their face because they know they're illegal. So that's that. Who has any questions tonight? Great.
So wait, what are you doing about that? Are you cracking down on these guys, or?
We are, my narcotics officers, I have 4 full-time deputies and a sergeant for WENET, West El Dorado Narcotics Enforcement Team. Plus our agency is part of a multi-jurisdictional task force in South Lake Tahoe that is supervised by one of my sergeants. They're hitting the hot ones. They're hitting the big cases, the major ones. But their stack is this big. We've been trying to figure out a way to come up with a compliance team to go around and deal just with Ordinance 5000. But we don't have the staffing for it, nor does code enforcement have the staffing for it, or anybody else, or probation. And quite honestly, I'm not sure if it's the smartest way to go to send people in there that aren't investigative minded and officer safety minded for those types of situations. Because does that make any sense? I mean, they're going up and saying, okay, we're just here to check and see how you're doing and make sure you're in compliance, and then start the whole misdemeanor and civil citation part of it through the county. But the problem is some of these guys will say, oh yeah, whatever, it's the cost of doing business for them, actually, to lose one because they got 10 other gardens going. But there's also other ones that are very dangerous. I mean, I don't want those staff getting in a gunfight because they were just running around.
But they say, I
checking.
guess you came up about, say, shutting off water. Is there anything you can do along those lines? That'd be very effective.
I don't think that would be legal.
Okay.
I don't think it would be legal. Great.
That brought up another question, but how long would that take if Ordinance 5000 was repealed? How long would it take, given this staffing problem you just outlined, to clean that up?
Well,
does that change anything in terms of
No.
staffing?
First of all, I think what would happen was if Ordinance 5000 was repealed and we put a heck of a media blast behind that to put it out there that we don't allow it anymore, then I think most of those, not most, some of those growers would go somewhere else where they allow it, where they have ordinances, because there are other places. As far as what would we do with those that are left, we keep hammering them the way we're doing. We keep fighting with the big ones and trying to rip them off. The nice thing about it is when they start investigating a big one, it blossoms. So we're not just taking off one garden. There's usually 5, 10, 20 gardens around the county and throughout Northern California, really, that all come into play. And they're taking down some rather large organizations. And again, it's funny when they serve a search warrant, and I've had this happen, serve a search warrant on one of these sites or a dispensary, and they say, I pay my taxes, doggone it, I'm a productive member of society. Really, where's your tax docs? Right here. They paid taxes on $250,000 last year, by God bless them. But they got $6 million in their safe. So, in the back.
How are we doing with,
Wait. One more.
okay, how are we doing with concealed carry permits?
We are currently, last number was 3,015. When I came in the office, there was 748.
Good job.
Just an observation, and I think this goes beyond this county, because I mean, well, I'll just reason say I've been out on the road for 4 years. I have driven a 35-foot motorhome over 33,000 miles personally. So what I'm seeing is jobs everywhere. Jobs everywhere. On factories, every single 18-wheeler that goes by is showing jobs. We want to hire people. So the problem you're dealing with right here is nationwide. And the reason is that nobody can pass a drug test when they go to get these jobs. So if you look at the possibility of going the other direction, I know the big farms, you're gonna have a problem. But you, like you just said, once you start looking at them, you get a whole big problem. But if you can do something in this county about doing random drug testing for every county employee and get the businesses to do random drug testing, you're gonna pull the little guy business away from it. Welfare, that absolutely is gonna have to be done, but it's statewide, I don't know, in California, Southern California, if it's gonna work. Maybe it would work in Northern California. So I'm just pointing out that people cannot get a job. If they can't have any money to buy it on welfare or for any even job at McDonald's, then they're not gonna have the people putting that $6 million in a safe. It's only gonna be when it's taken out of the state. Because everybody else is out there in La La Land, in Colorado and whatever, and nobody can do any work.
No, I hear you.
That's just a couple of points that I thought I'd bring up.
Yeah, no, I don't work in the legislature or the board of supervisors, I'm the sheriff. But your point just raises a huge point. I mentioned the vacancy rate hiring. We'll have, for deputy sheriff, I bet we hire less than 2% of the applicants that apply for deputy sheriff. They can't pass backgrounds. Number one, they can't communicate effectively because they just can't. But they can't pass backgrounds. And I'm not kidding you. We'll have candidates that will get through the civil service testing process. They'll get through the oral board. Everything's looking great. We put them in background. And I said, I'm not kidding you. When we have had, by the time they get to me, they're already washed out. But I have had them tell my deputies, my background investigator, well, what do you mean I can't sell meth last week? I can't use coke or heroin. It's just a misdemeanor.
You recruited the veterans, in the veteran community?
We love them, absolutely.
I mean, how?
We recruit heavily. That was how the TV show came about, was to make a recruiting video so we could get out there more through the military, guys coming out of the military, through academies that are going on, high schools, job fairs, everywhere we can get into to recruit. But believe it or not, even some of the military guys coming out, they can't pass a background. They get an honorable on their 215, but they come out, they're out for 6 months, and they end up partying with some friends down at Camp Pendleton, and man, they just do some stupid stuff, and the choices that they're making are not good, they're not healthy, obviously, but it ruins them for getting into this type of profession. It's tough, because we can't, number one, post has standards, and number two, I have standards, and we hire the best of the best, and we're not gonna lower those standards. Yeah, Chief?
Yeah, the sheriff's got it right. You know, if we want to hire on the fire side, because we have very similar background checks, medicals, and very strict requirements. If we want to hire 6 people, we have to start at 100 to get 6 at the end. It's a big process.
Yeah.
And we've actually started. We kind of gave up on that. We've actually started an Explorer program where we get them when they're 10, 11, 12, and we start drilling into them. You're not going to get a job with us unless you avoid all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's starting to be successful because we've actually, some of those folks have gone from the Explorer program to the volunteer program, and then we've been able to hire them, and they're clean. But it's a major dilemma.
Yeah, we do that too. We have a very robust Explorer program. Right now, we're up to 26 Explorers, and we've actually, since I came on, they've started coming through, and we're hiring them a couple COs and whatnot. Another thing that we started doing too is every year we've flown an open application to El Dorado County Sheriff's Office employees that have an interest in becoming a deputy sheriff if they're not a deputy sheriff. So records techs, dispatchers, correctional officers, anybody else that's employed by the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office, if they have aspirations of becoming a deputy, they can apply. And they go through a rigorous testing process. The first year we sent 2. This year we sent 3. 1 didn't make it. He no longer works for the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office. But last Friday night I graduated 2 out of Sac County Sheriff's Office. One of which, and this never happens, this is Sacramento County's Academy. He received top of the class in arrest control and tactics, top of the class in firearms with the Top Gun Award, and top of the class in academics. So he swept everything. And they were ticked because they wanted him. They can't have him. He's an outstanding young man. Actually, he's a retired military, a retired Marine, and a lieutenant in the reserves, and just got his master's degree. Yes, sir.
The comment is, when I was in the Marines, I was in Vietnam, or I went to Vietnam, one of the guys in boot camp had stolen 53 cars. By the time he was 17 years old, the judge says you either join the Marines or you're going to go to jail. The guy wound up with a Silver Star, Bronze Star, 3 Purple Hearts. So he turned out okay. So maybe, and I've seen lots of people that way. Another gentleman, same thing. Silver Star got kicked out of town because he was a really bad ruffian. And he joined the Marines, went to Vietnam, Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Hearts. Somebody just gave him a chance. And I think these guys coming out of Iraq, some of them have served 3, 4, 5 tours, they're pretty screwed up in the head. And if you just gave them a chance and set aside a block of time and said, square yourself away, this is where we're going to be, you'll find you get some good people.
Yeah, and we do get a lot of good people out of the military. Like I said, they're fantastic employees, and fantastic, the ones that are sworn are fantastic deputies. But there's a couple problems, though, that we have with the law. Number 1, post, California Peace Officer Standards and Training. There are some things that are automatic disqualifiers that I can't overlook. I can't even say, well, we'll do that. And to be perfectly honest with you, I have learned my lesson on the old saying, no good deed goes unpunished. And got my butt hurt pretty bad a couple times for it. So I'm very, very leery. I understand what you say. I'd love to take a chance on some of these kids. They are kids. I'll call them kids. And once in a while, we've looked at different ways of things, but man, I'm just very, very leery of we hire the best of the best. Yes, Steve.
Sheriff, can you talk about the forest, and is there anything at all you can do to keep the forest from burning down? That seems to be the policy of the department.
Fireman, you're talking to a cop.
I know, but you're the one that has the
See,
gun.
you guys get a skate on every fire. Well, as far as the timber, and I think this is what you're getting at. After the King Fire was out, SPI, private property timber, it's harvested. It's clean. It's ripped. It's ready to plant this winter. It's beautiful up there on their land. I was talking to my brother this morning, who is the owner of J&R Logging, one of the last biggest loggers left up here. The Forest Service finally went out to bid on some timber, dead timber from the King Fire. He said the problem is they're not going to sell it because they're not going to give anything for it. It's not going to happen. So they waited that long, and their argument will be, well, we came up with the sale. We had a plan. We came up with the sale. But yeah, to the point where it was worthless. So, it's from the law enforcement side, there's a couple things. Now everybody in the room knows what I did with the Forest Service Law Enforcement Investigations Division back in 2012. When I pulled their state authority because they just wouldn't administer public safety in the manner that I demand from my deputies. There was just one really in particular, but it was really training some of the other ones to do some of the same bad activity. Well, under the penal code, they get their state authority from me, and I can pull it any time, and I did. And I haven't given it back, and I'm not going to give it back because this is working just fine. But what I have been doing, and what I've asked for many times, I've asked for their budget. I want to know what the LE&I, Law Enforcement and Investigations Division's budget is for the El Dorado National Forest. Not the resource side of the house, the LE&I side. I've asked for that budget number over and over and over, and you know what? I can't get that number. Because the U.S. Forest Service doesn't budget in the manner that we budget. They budget on, I can't remember the word for it, but there's not a dollar amount, it's just a vehicle. And they budget a body, and they budget a computer, and they budget a gun, and they budget bullets. And it's all these little pockets, little parts, but no money there. But I've estimated their budget is somewhere around between $1.5 to $2 million for the LE&I side of the house. And I've said, well, I'll back up a little bit. Last year, I was at a Western State Sheriff's Association conference, and Forest Service was there giving a presentation, and I actually felt a little bit sorry for them because Western State Sheriffs, not like California State Sheriffs, these guys barbecued these representatives. But what I did here, a couple things. Number one, their budget got cut 12%, and they're having a very, very hard time filling vacancies in their organization, same as law enforcement everywhere. So I came up with a plan. I said, I'll tell you what, pilot program. Let's just give it a shot. Let's try it. You're getting cut 12%. You give me the El Dorado National Forest LE&I's budget minus 15%. I'll save you 3. You don't have to lay anybody off. You reassign those officers that are assigned to the El Dorado National Forest, assign them to other vacancies throughout the state or wherever else you need them that you can't have, you're having a hard time filling. I'll take a certain number of my deputies down to the federal courthouse. We'll have a federal judge swear them in, cross-pollinate them as federal officers in regards to these unique federal laws that need to be enforced on the national forest. And I guarantee you, I will administer public safety in our national forest better than you guys do. And of course, we know what the answer to that was. However, and I'm learning some of these games that get played, and I'm waiting to see if it happens, although all the appropriation bills in federal and in DC are on hold right now because of the Iran deal. But as soon as they start coming back to the table, these lobbyists and different congressmen and senators, whenever you hear of a bill going through, appropriations bill or anything like that, there's all these other little things that get slapped onto the bottom of them as they're going through. A little favor for this guy, a little favor for that guy, a little thing here. Sometimes they're called pork, whatever you want to call them. Earmarks, pork, all the way through the whole process.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we have a few folks that want to slap on a little couple paragraphs in these appropriations bills that says El Dorado County will do a pilot program with the LE&I division of the El Dorado National Forest. That's already written, but all the appropriations are stopped right now because of the Iran deal. I don't know why, I don't know how that happened, but we'll see. If that happens, maybe we'll do some breaking ground here in El Dorado County. But I guarantee you, if I have whatever they have, I'll do it better for less. I guarantee it. Yeah, Rob?
Yeah, I got a question relating to all the marijuana that's out there. Is that primarily in the public lands, or
Nope.
is it in private property, or what?
No, it's all, we're not seeing the amount of MDTO, or Mexican Drug Trafficking Organization, grows on our public lands anymore. This is mostly on private property. Absentee landowners, renters, or they're just coming in and buying the property outright. When you see, it just happened the other day, a friend of ours was trying to sell their house. They'd had it on the market for $485,000 out in the middle of nowhere. I thought she was nuts, but that's what she had it listed for a year and a half. And out of the blue, somebody came up and offered her cash and a 30-day escrow. And of course, she took it, and I said, well, you know what they're going to do to your house? She says, well, no, and I said, they're gonna turn it into a grow house, it's gonna be full of marijuana, and everything around your old yard's gonna be full of marijuana. Oh, no, they're not gonna do that. I said, yeah, they are, we'll see. But that's what they're doing, that's what they're doing. So, we've seen a huge reduction in those forest grows. We good?
One other question. In the last couple of years, there's been a concept, you touched on it a little bit earlier, asset forfeiture, policing for profit.
Oh, yeah.
The state of New Mexico just outlawed asset forfeiture for New Mexico. And this policing for profit is a real big problem back east. How do you distinguish the idea of asset forfeiture, meaning taking somebody's cash because they're pulled over by a deputy or some other cop, but they're not charged with a crime, but their money is forfeit?
Okay.
How do you distinguish that from just out and out legalized theft?
Okay, because that's not what happens in California, at least everything that I've been involved with, and I'll tell you why. Here's what happens. We're investigating a major drug operation, or we have a tip that somebody's selling, trafficking a lot of different types of drugs, or whatever it is. Through the course of that investigation, we stop a car, there's a lot of cash. It's never just the cash. They always want to say, we're just stopping the car and we're taking the cash. There's usually guns, there's dope, there's payos, there's scales, there's everything else that justifies a sales case. And we can prove what we believe probable cause, the district attorney has to have beyond a reasonable doubt. We have probable cause to believe that that guy or girl, with all this evidence, has committed this crime, and that is ill-gotten gains. Okay? It's not just, we stopped the car, you got a bunch of money, oh yeah, you can go on your way. That's not how it happens. We charge all these crimes on this knucklehead for bringing poison into our communities. And then what happens, and we seize $100,000 in cash. Okay? Now, first of all, the seizure is a separate issue. First of all, that cash is evidence. Number one, it's evidence. At the same time, we start a civil claim against that money as ill-gotten gain, the fruit of illegal behavior. As the criminal case starts moving through the court system, for whatever reason, they get pled down, this gets dismissed, that gets dismissed, or whatever. I have never seen one that goes away. In my entire career, I've never seen one that just says, well, yeah, we're dropping the whole thing, but we're going to keep the cash. Not in my career. I've never seen it.